Okay, so in today's world, information just comes at you constantly, right? It's a lot.
It really is. Information overload is a real challenge.
Totally. And when you're working with AI agents, you want them to be smart, you want them to be current, but how do you keep up without just, drowning in updates?
That's the core issue, keeping agents informed with changing data.
Exactly. So today, we're doing a deep dive to give you a shortcut, basically.
Yeah.
A way to understand how AI agents can connect to dynamic external data. We're focusing specifically on Google Sheets.
Mm-hmm. And we're drawing heavily from some excellent lecture notes by Jae-Wo Choi.
Right, from George Washington University.
Yeah.
Also the principal investigator of the CAFA initiative.
That's the one. CAFA, pronounced a SECAP, like Kappa. The notes really lay out these key commands for Google Sheets integration.
Good stuff. So we're going to unpack two main commands today,
Okay.
a GS and a GSTABLE.
That's right.
And we'll show you how these can take a simple spreadsheet, something you probably use all the time, and turn it into a really powerful dynamic data source for your AI.
It fundamentally changes things.
So let's start big picture. You build an AI agent, you write these great prompts, but the prompts themselves, they don't change, right? They're static.
Exactly. That's the limitation.
So what happens when the information your agent needs is changing? All the time, like daily, hourly.
Yeah. How do you feed it that live data without constantly rewriting everything?
Precisely. Constantly tweaking prompts or hard-coding updates sounds like a nightmare.
Well, this is where the CAFA protocol comes in. It offers a really robust way to handle this.
Okay.
It lets you connect agents directly to Google Sheets. And that's what unlocks the real power, giving them access to these dynamic external data sources.
So it's not just a nice to have, it's foundational.
Absolutely foundational. If you want to build agents that are sophisticated, that can adapt, and importantly, that are actually easy to maintain over time.
Easy to maintain is key. I mean, modelers can then keep all this complex data, maybe a knowledge base or configuration settings in a spreadsheet, right?
Exactly. Something familiar, collaborative.
It's kind of like giving your agent its own external brain that's always getting updated.
That's a great way to put it. And think about the types of dynamic data. Stock prices, obviously.
Right.
Inventory levels, project statuses that change constantly, maybe event schedules.
Things that are just impossible to keep embedding in prompts.
Totally impractical. And it's not just for super dynamic data either, even for large, mostly static data sets.
Like what?
Well, think about a whole university course catalog or a product list with thousands of items, maybe a really complex decision tree.
Ah, okay. Stuff that's just too big or complex for a prompt.
Exactly. Putting that in a spreadsheet makes it manageable, accessible.
And this leads to that modular design benefit you mentioned,
Precisely. You separate the agent's thinking its core logic from its knowledge base.
which makes both parts easier to manage.
Much easier. You can update the spreadsheet data without touching the agent's code or prompts. And crucially, anyone with spreadsheet access can update it, even non-programmers.
Okay, that democratic aspect is huge. So let's get practical. How do we actually do this? You mentioned it GS.
Yes, at GS. Think of this as the fundamental building block. It's like a direct, raw data pipe.
Raw data pipe. Okay. What does it do specifically?
Its job is simple. Fetch data from a specific range of cells in a Google Sheet
Got it.
and return it all as one single structured string. It keeps the table layout using special characters, but, and this is key, it doesn't interpret the data.
So it just grabs the text, basically.
Exactly. Raw information pull, the most basic level.
Okay, now there's a really important prerequisite here, right, for the Google Sheet itself.
Yes, absolutely critical. The sheet must be shared with a permission setting anyone with the link can view.
Non-negotiable.
Non-negotiable. If you don't set that, the command just won't work. It can't access the sheet.
And that sharing setting has security implications too, right? It's read-only.
Exactly. It ensures the agent can read the data, but can never, ever change the source sheet. It's a safe connection.
Makes sense. So if I want to use a GS, what's the syntax look like?
Pretty simple. At GS, sheet ID, range, PS.
Okay, sheet ID. That's the long string of characters in the sheet's URL.
That's the one. Between the D and the edit, you just copy and paste that.
Got it. And the range.
Standard spreadsheet notation, like A1.B4 for a block of cells.
Or a whole column like AA.
Yep. Or a single row, like A5.D5. And if you have multiple sheets in your file, you can specify the sheet name too.
How does that work?
You put the sheet name in single quotes, especially if it has spaces, then an exclamation mark, then the range, like sheet2.A1.B4.
Okay, single quotes for spaces. Good tip. Now, you said it returns a structured string. What does that actually look like?
Right, so it uses special delimiters for machine readability, specifically within the CAFA CAPE protocol.
Delimiters. Like commas.
Not commas, because
Yeah.
commas might actually be in your data. It uses the pipe character to separate rows,
Okay.
and the ampersand character into separate cells within each row.
Pipe for rows, ampersand for cells. Why those?
They're chosen because they're pretty unlikely to show up naturally in your cell content. Helps avoid parsing errors.
Ah, smart. Can you give us an example?
Sure. Let's say you have a sheet 2, with headers course title in A1 and instructor in B1.
Okay.
And row 2 has CAFA 101 and Jaiwa Choi. Row 3 has CAFA 102 and Jondo.
There you go.
If you run at GS, sheet2.a1.b3, the command returns this exact string, course title instructor, CAFA 101 and Jaiwa, Choi, CAFA 102, and Jondo.
Okay, I see it. Not very readable for me, but I can see the structure. Pipe between rows, ampersand between cells.
Exactly. It's structured perfectly for an agent. You can then use other commands on that string.
Like what?
Like maybe at repeat to loop through each course and do something. Or at set T to pull out just the instructor name for the second course, for example.
So it gives the person building the agent, the modeler, full control over that raw data.
Total control. It's the fundamental piece.
Okay, so at GS is the raw pipe. But what if I don't want raw data? What if I want something more? Immediately usable. I'm thinking back to projects where manually setting up agent configurations from data felt so clunky.
Yes, that's where at GSTABLE comes in. It's the next level up.
How so?
If at GS is the raw pipe, think of at GSTABLE as like a smart filter and organizer. It's built on at GS, but it adds intelligence.
Intelligence, what does it do?
It automatically creates what are called modeler-defined parameters directly from the sheet data.
Okay, parameters, the variables the agent can use.
Exactly. It essentially transforms your spreadsheet range into a ready-to-use internal database or knowledge set for the agent. The data becomes instantly queryable inside the agent's context.
Wow, okay. That sounds powerful. Does it need the same sharing permission?
Yes, same exact prerequisite. Anyone with the link can view. Still absolutely required.
Got it. And the syntax? Similar.
Very similar. At GSTABLE, sheeted range option at GTIT. The sheeted and range work just like in at GS.
But there's that optional option part again.
Right. And it's important. It defaults to one behavior, but you can change it by providing NO as the option.
Okay, so what's the default behavior? How does it normally work?
By default, at GSTABLE assumes the very first row in the range you specify contains headers, column names.
Makes sense for most tables.
Exactly. It then creates a parameter for each of those headers, and it populates each parameter with the data from the cells below that header in the same column.
Okay, so it uses the first row to name the parameters.
Precisely. That's the most common way you'd use it.
But what if my data doesn't have a header row? Like maybe it's just the list of values or log data.
That's what the NO option is for. If you specify NO at GSTABLE, does not treat the first row as headers.
So what happens then?
It creates default parameter names like P1, P2, P3, etc. for column 1, column 2, column 3.
Okay.
And crucially, it includes the data from that first row as the first piece of data in those parameters, P1, P2, etc.
I see. So NO means treat the first row as data, not headers, and use default names.
You got it. Super useful for raw lists or logs.
Okay, let's make this concrete. Give me that compelling example. How does a GSTABLE really save time?
Right. Imagine your sheet has columns make and model starting in row 11. So cell A11 is make, B11 is model.
Yeah.
Row 12 has Toyota, Corolla. Row 13 has Honda, Civic.
Standard car data.
Exactly. If you run just this one command at GSTABLE, A11 up B13 at,
Using the default behavior, assuming headers.
correct. That single command automatically does the work of two separate at set commands behind the scenes. It's like it runs at set make, Toyota Honda, at set model, Corolla Civic, at F.
Whoa, okay, that is efficient. It just creates the make and model parameters instantly.
Instantly. The agent's context is immediately updated. It now knows about makes and models from your sheet.
So then, in my next prompt, I could just use them.
Absolutely. You could write a prompt like, quick check. We have a at make 2, at model 2 at available right.
And the agent would see at make 2 and at model 2, look up the second item in those parameters.
And the resolved text would be, quick check. We have a Honda Civic available right.
That's incredibly slick. That saves so much manual setup.
It really does. For you, the listener, this means less time writing complex setup prompts, easier debugging, and a seamless way to connect your agent to data that can be updated just by editing the spreadsheet.
Yeah, the team just updates the sheet. The agent gets the new info automatically next time it runs. Powerful.
So let's quickly summarize the two. When do you use which?
Okay. Add GS.
Is for the raw stuff. Unprocessed data string. Gives you maximum control if you need to do something very specific with that raw output yourself.
Right. And add GSTABLE.
Add GSTABLE is usually the preferred way, especially for tabular data. It's smarter, creating those usable parameters directly. Instantly structures the data for your agent.
So for most common use cases, like reading configuration tables or knowledge bases from a sheet, add GSTABLE is probably the winner.
Generally, yes, it's more efficient, more readable in your agent logic, but a GS is still there in your toolkit for those niche cases where you need the raw delimited string.
Both valuable, but at GSTABLE. Sounds like the workhorse for everyday integration.
I think that's a fair assessment.
So, wrapping up. By getting a handle on these two commands, at GS and at GSTABLE, you really unlock this ability to take a simple Google sheet and make it a living, breathing part of your AI agent's knowledge.
Exactly. It changes how you think about managing the agent's information.
It's not just about making the agent more powerful, is it? It's about that decoupling, separating the thinking part from the knowing part.
Precisely. That decoupling transforms how you manage and scale these projects, makes everything more modular, more maintainable.
And lets more people contribute to the agent's knowledge just by editing a familiar spreadsheet.
It opens up a lot of possibilities. So the final thought for you, the listener, is what data sources may be sitting in spreadsheets right now could you plug into your AI projects using these techniques? What could your agents know?